And liftoff of Transporter 7. Go south.
Now, there are more than 10,000 active satellites in orbit, and with only 62 satellites launched, Africa does not make up even 1%, according to Spacehubs Africa. The continent doesn't even have any launch facilities of its own yet. So why is the continent still lagging behind in the global space race? Now, Africa is bearing the brunt of climate change and could benefit from easy access to satellite data. With extreme weather patterns on the rise, the data could help identify potential threats, monitor crops and natural resources, and improve telecommunication. But only 17 African countries have satellites in orbit, including countries like Egypt, South Africa, and Nigeria. Senegal joined the list in August, launching its first satellite from California, with President Diomaye Faye saying it was a step towards technological sovereignty. The African Union Commission says it plans to inaugurate the African Space Agency next year, which will act as a focal point for continental space cooperation. The World Economic Forum estimates the space economy rose to $630 billion in 2023. Space in Africa says the continent could reap more than $20 billion by 2026, but local investment is needed. Now, most of the funding so far comes from outside the continent. But even in space, Africa is the center of a tug of war between the United States and China. Beijing has launched satellites with Algeria, Nigeria, Sudan, Ethiopia, and Egypt. The U.S., on the other hand, launched South Africa's first satellite in 1999, and space cooperation between the two countries remains strong. All right, let's hear more from Jessie Ndaba. She's the CEO and co-founder of Astrophica and a board member of the South African National Space Agency. She joins me from Cape Town, South Africa. Thank you so much, Madam Jessie, for joining us. Now, we only have 62 satellites launched from 17 African countries. The first question, Madam, is why does Africa still lag behind?
It indeed is a very good question, because Africa is a very large continent, and for us to be still sitting with 62 satellites, it means we are still lagging. But I think we have to not shy away from the fact that as Africans, there are a lot of challenges that we are having. And, you know, with having to make the decision of whether to support space programs or rather look at the challenges that we're having, I think it really is a difficult one for our leaders or decision makers. But as you may have noticed, there are countries in Africa that are now venturing into space. So I think as Africans, we have realized that even though we have a lot of challenges that we're facing, we could make use of space technology in addressing those, as much as it is difficult, you know, to say, do I look at job opportunities, for instance, employment? We know that we are struggling with that as Africans. Housing, especially in countries like South Africa, I can make an example. So having to have the leaders supporting our space programs, it actually means as space professionals, we need to stop working in silos and start talking to our government people, private sectors, our banks, our insurance companies, everybody, because for us to make this work, for us to grow and sustain our economies and our continent, I believe it takes everyone involved in Africa, not space professionals.
Right.
Thanks.
And you mentioned challenges, and part of the challenges we face as a continent is climate change. And here we are saying that, you know, these satellites could help in addressing climate change or, you know, assessing extreme weather patterns, which are actually on the rise and all of that. So with the 62 satellites that we have already in orbit, have we as a continent in any way benefited from these?
So, yes, we, um, I remember when we were having fires in Cape Town. One of our satellites that was launched during the QB50 mission, the InSight, was used in detecting that. We all know that we cannot stop natural disasters from happening, but having that early reaction, getting the information on time so that we can properly plan on how we can assist. But of course, we can do more. We need early detection or predictions, rather, if I should put it that way, so that we can better prepare for when it happens, that we are ready, we have notified people. But what I have noticed is that as much as we have these satellites, we have not mastered the link between the upstream sector and the downstream sector. And I keep saying we need to stop working in silos. We have the satellites, we've launched them, but how do we ensure that the downstream sector that is responsible in downloading the data and processing it in developing the applications and the products, they are ready to have it automated so that we can quickly mitigate the losses that we keep experiencing because we delay in
Right.
responding to these disasters.
All right. Now, we do not have any launch facilities yet. I mean, even the latest one in Senegal, which launched its first satellite, happened in California, not on the Senegalese soil, not on the African continent. The African Union Commission has plans to inaugurate, the African Space Agency next year, that's 2025. But still, what needs to be done to strengthen our space muscle, if I could call it that?
There are plans, there are ongoing plans in resuscitating because before 1994, South Africa had facilities that were being developed for launch capability, but then those were paused. I do know that there are activities going on currently to resuscitate that, to ensure that we do have that guaranteed access as Africans in space. Because one of the reasons why we see Africans launching satellites, even though we're not launching from our soils, but Africans owning their own space assets. It is purely because we would love to have that guaranteed access to space.
Right.
So I do know that there are exercises that are taking place to ensure that someday we will be launching from our African soils.
Right. And lastly, Madam Jessie, and in less than a minute, please, Senegalese President Diomaye Faye said this is when, the satellite was launched in California. He said that's a significant step towards technological sovereignty. Technological sovereignty. Is it?
I agree. It is very important for us to have that sovereignty in these technologies. And what I like the most about us as Africans, I hear a lot of people talking about space race, but I choose to believe that it's not just a race for us, but it's Africans saying we have now realized that we can make use of space technologies in addressing our challenges. And we want to be in the driver's seat in ensuring that we as Africans, we come up with those solutions. We are open to collaboration with either within ourselves as Africans or even outside the African borders. We are open to that. But what we are saying is that we would love to be a part of that. We understand our challenges better than anybody else. Therefore, we want to be part of the solutions. We want to be at the core of implementing those solutions. So, yes, sovereignty is very important for us. And we know that it is really not a wasteful expenditure, because the technologies developed for these space programs can also be used in other sectors as well. And we
Right.
have seen that happening. So we really are driving as Africans. We really would continue embarking on space programs and
Indeed.
space activities.
Indeed. And thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Jessie Ndaba, the CEO and co-founder of Astrophica. Thank you for your time and contribution. Right, and there are concerns that space is rapidly starting to look a lot like Earth, with roughly 100 million bits of space junk floating above our heads. Experts say if we don't clean things up, chances are the trash will prevent further advances and stop some of the progress we've already made. In South Africa, the only space weather warning center in the Southern Hemisphere is working with BRICS nations to tackle space debris. Chris Olodison filed this report from the space agency town of Hermanus.
Space, the final junk frontier, and an eyewitness filmed some of it returning to Earth over South Africa's Eastern Cape province in August. Scientists say it was consistent with a rocky asteroid the size of a car entering the atmosphere at high speed. And here at the South African National Space Agency Space Weather Centre, experts work around the clock to ensure accurate weather forecasts for the country's defence and security agencies. With roughly 2,000 satellites in orbit, managing space debris is a critical aspect of the job.
If there is a lot of them and there's all this junk there in space, then we're going to have a problem with space, finding space in space for the satellites. So that would pose a problem for us because we rely on a lot of satellite imagery, and therefore that's why countries, for example, maybe can work to collect, to share data together, so maybe use one satellite.
Khan says this could mitigate space junk, which is made up of obsolete satellites, rocket parts and man-made debris. Researchers estimate that the United States, Russia and China are responsible for about 92% of space debris, which causes a significant risk to future space exploration, particularly for emerging nations.
Maybe right now, the nation of South Africa only has a few satellites that are associated with their flag, but they want to be able to do more of that. And so you don't want the big players to say, no, sorry, we took up all the good slots. You can have that crappy land over there.
More countries are joining the space race, and with population growth globally, chances of harmless space debris re-entry onto the Earth's surface are shrinking. So experts are calling for spacecraft's designs that allow for their safe disposal before they even leave the ground, and a shorter time frame for the 2007 United Nations guidelines that recommend disposal no more than 25 years after a satellite's mission ends. South Africa, with its geographic advantage on the tip of the African continent, is positioning itself as a support destination for international space activities. This space agency has recently hosted several heads of other African space agencies, including Egypt, Kenya and Nigeria, to share information and look into future partnerships. Crystal Audison, Africa Matters, Hermanus.
Now, after more than 7 years of separatist conflict, one of the few industries in Cameroon's Anglophone region is experiencing a revival. In the town of Bouer, filmmakers are back in business after a long break. It's part of an effort to restore cultural spaces to the region, as Arison Tamfu reports.
Montana Peters, a respected filmmaker in the country, is directing a series which highlights the perils of drugs and family disputes. The series is called Money Over Family and is expected to premiere next year.
2 years from now, we are going to be far, because presently we are mostly doing YouTube films, and this is going to give the Cameroonian market, the opportunity to watch our films.
Since 2017, fighting between government forces and separatist fighters has made it too dangerous to shoot movies in this part of the country. The industry is now back to business in safer areas and catching up after a long break. This crew has been shooting without interruption for 10 days, something that was impossible 7 years ago. Montana says that means the industry is experiencing a renaissance.
There's a revival of the industry because around 2017, 18, 19, we could not shoot beyond 6 p.m. We could not even shoot because, for example, maybe a police police were everywhere. But today, this is 2024, this is December, and we're getting into 2025, and we can shoot late into the night. You get from 2023 to 24, things have really improved.
We have to do things according to the rules.
The Central African nation has seen considerable growth in its film productions, with over 300 movies produced since 2008, particularly in the troubled Anglophone regions. For veteran actors like Lina Chojekwe, also known as Mamidona, the revival will breathe new life to Kollywood, the affectionate name for Cameroon's film industry.
The youths have taken it up and they are making it big. Today you can boast of films on Netflix, you can boast of films on Amazon and YouTube, and some are cashing out. I think anybody in my place would be say at least Cameroon is making it big time.
Filmmakers say that it is too soon to tell if the revival will last because the conflict is still in progress. But what is clear is local filmmakers are determined to keep putting Cameroon and Africa on the spotlight. Aris Intafu, Africa Matters, Buea, Cameroon.
To northeast Nigeria now, where thousands of people have been displaced in a region already grappling with food insecurity. The Jere Rice Bowl, once the pride of Bono's agricultural output, has also been devastated by the recent overflow of a dam. Ibrahim Shehu traveled there and reports from the heart of this unfolding crisis.
The Alau Dam is a vital resource of irrigation and water supply, but it has also become a source of destruction. Its sudden rupture sent torrents of water cascading through communities, wrecking homes, farmlands, and lives. The rice fields, known as the Jere Rice Bowl in Zabarmari, are now waterlogged wastelands. Farmers like Issa Rabiu have been left counting the cost.
My house was destroyed. My farm was submerged. I don't have a home or produce to sell. Rice farming is the only job I know. I can't take care of my family anymore. I don't have any means of livelihood. It's really devastating.
This farmland was once a critical agricultural hub for Nigeria's rice production. Though the floodwaters have receded, the damage has been done. Harvests have been decimated and much of the produce has been lost. Farmers here are struggling to salvage what little is left after months of hard work and investment. The local government officials estimate that over 2,000 hectares of land across 3 villages have been affected by this year's flood.
The rice we produced is not only consumed here, it is taken to Maiduguri, Bauchi and Kano. They depend on us for rice production because of the quality of the rice we produce. We produce some of the best rice in the country, so it's a big loss for us.
The consequences of the floods are rippling through local markets. Prices for staples like rice and corn have surged, making it harder for families to afford basic meals.
The flood really made rice very expensive. Last year we bought a measure of rice for 2,600 to 2,700 naira, but now it's over 4,000 naira. We produce this rice here and it is now expensive because of the flood tragedy.
I usually invest in rice farming in about 85 to 90 hectares of land. Last year we got over 700 bags of rice, but this year I didn't get a single bag of rice.
Cornfields have also vanished. Beanstalks have rotted and millets has been swept away.
It has really impacted negatively on the economic situation of the country. But as I've said, we are coming up. His Excellency is really supporting us and we are coming up in the dry season farming. And it will, inshallah, even if it's not 100% complementary, but it will complement what they have lost.
Farmers say they cannot rebuild alone. They are now hoping for urgent support from the government and global agencies to secure their future. Ibrahim Show, Africa Matters, Borno, Northeast Nigeria.
And staying in Nigeria, now the country's 9 million deaf people say they often face systemic discrimination in both their daily lives and online. But a man in Abuja is trying to change this narrative by building the largest tech community of deaf people in the world, starting in his home country. Palum David has more from Abuja.
2 years ago, Dr. Ayola Arowolo started gathering deaf people to encourage and empower them. He's training them so they can work and reduce the number of unemployed people with disabilities in Nigeria.
What we've been doing is providing that skills for the deaf community, training them in data analytics, training them in Python programming, training them in website design, training them in tech skills that are that they easily can thrive in.
His initiative is called Deaf in Tech. So far, more than 1,000 deaf people like Abubakar have had the chance to develop their tech skills.
I have been here for 2 years now. I started as a learner. I applied for the first cohort of the Deaf in Tech 1.0. At that time, I didn't know much about data analysis.
Just like Abubakar, Albert was also a student at Deaf in Tech. Today, he's employed by one of Nigeria's biggest civil society as a data analyst. He also teaches other colleagues sign language to bridge communication gaps at work. Deaf girls are also not left behind. The organization has created room for 60% female participation in training and skill development for inclusion. Experts say deaf girls are twice as marginalized. But people like Cynthia Tochi have challenged those stereotypes and overcame barriers to learning.
If I wasn't given access to learn here, how would I know about office work? I wouldn't know. And anywhere they are talking about office work, I am very ignorant. And this is because I do not have access to it. And technology, how to use computer, then I will now be living on handouts.
According to Deaf Rights in Nigeria, there are about 9 million deaf people in the country, many of which have been marginalized. But initiatives like this are improving lives of disabled people and better include them in the working world.
Dr. Ayola says being a pillar of support to the deaf community in Nigeria has not been without challenges.
These trainees do not have personal laptops to be able to practice at home or to work with, and this is something we're really hoping to be able to solve for them.
He has also set up an online tech learning platform called DeafLearn, where classes are taught using sign language. Palum David, Africa Matters, Abuja.
Now, the Kenya Wildlife Service, conservationists and local communities are racing against time to save the tallest land mammal on the planet. It's believed that the endangered reticulated giraffe in northeastern Kenya may face extinction with the rise in poaching activities and gamey trade that is growing in the region. Isadin Haji reports.
In northeastern Kenya, the reticulated giraffe, a symbol of the region's wild splendor, is under threat. Volunteer conservationist Mokhtar Sheikh is committed to tracking and protecting these graceful giants.
The giraffe is facing extinction because of the human-wildlife conflict. Here you find about 50 heads just behind us, and there are about 70 heads on the other side, mainly because of poaching. There's high poaching and the meat is being consumed in town, and there's commercialization of that meat even to the border country, Somalia.
To combat poaching and promote coexistence with nature, conservationists and the Kenya Wildlife Service are working to educate local communities on the importance of protecting the reticulated giraffe.
This is more than just about saving an animal. It's about preserving a legacy, a heritage that future generations deserve to inherit.
The giraffe is a blessing and part of the landscape. You can see its beauty. It has huge importance and value.
The Kenya Wildlife Service reports a 30% decline in giraffe populations over the past 3 decades, with the reticulated giraffe or Somali giraffe amongst the hardest hit. An increase in poaching and severe drought in the region are driving this alarming drop.
We are sure that if we get this land, the history of wildlife poaching and wildlife challenges that are facing the wildlife will be solved. And the community will also benefit from the wildlife. So it's a matter of a win-win for both the community and the wildlife.
Conservationists and communities hope that their efforts will save the reticulated giraffe from extinction and preserve the region's identity for generations to come. Isadin Haji, Africa Matters, Hol Alley location, northeastern Kenya.
That's our show this week. Share your thoughts and suggestions about the stories you've seen on this episode or ideas on what you'd like us to cover on YouTube or on X using the hashtag Africa Matters. Thanks for watching, and it's goodbye from me, Grace Kuria Kanja.